Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
The Conservative Party sent out a letter to the leader, John Rustad, asking for his resignation. I mean, I called it, I think, last week that I don't think he'd last the week. He's got a couple of days left. If my, guess is right. I think, like the shoe dropped when he kicked Eleanor Sturko out of the party. I think that was a really bad move.
Yeah.
And then I interviewed Amelia Boltby. Was it just this week or was it last week? I think the end of last week.
I think it was Friday, wasn't it? Yeah.
And she was spitting nails. And then, there's been quite a bit of, even from the Conservative, and here's the Conservative Party itself, but a lot of Conservatives, even in other provinces, have asked John Rustad to step down. And I remember we had Jonathan Kay in, and he said, and he wasn't not a friend of the NDP or the Conservatives. He says, what is literally going on here in BC? He said, are you guys okay out here? You got to go listen to that interview. That is one of the better interviews we've done all year with Jonathan Kay. It's about an hour and a half, and it's well worth listening to. But he was worried about BC.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm trying to. He's almost trying to rescue the province, wasn't he? From the east, trying to say it quite so, but being very comical about it.
I keep getting sucked into the lightning round. I didn't say you were ChatGPT. You got to listen carefully. I said maybe we should bring on ChatGPT and you act like our ChatGPT. There you go. So, come on. Anyway, I almost said something.
But yeah, this about John Rustad. Yeah, I mean, it does kind of. It looks a bit like the end, doesn't it? But the only question is, what we don't know is how many kind of true believers does he have?
Well, I think
how many of the king's bodyguard are there willing to kind of die in battle for John Rustad? I don't know, because sometimes when that's the case, these can be quite difficult situations to work through. And he does seem to have inspired quite a lot of people, and he has a kind of cadre of loyalists, doesn't he?
I mean, huge credit to him. He brought a party out of nowhere, and took it almost to government. And I think he had that misstep with Falcon. He would have formed government. But I mean, a lot of those. I think a lot of the people that will stick right by his side won the election with the blue C, and that's from Pierre Poilievre, right? It was this blue sign. And, there's a lot of first-time politicians in his party that likely won't win if there's let's just pick for instance, say an Eleanor Sturko takes over the party. She's probably going to take more center-of-the-road type people. And a lot of these first-timers that haven't done a lot or done a lot of interviews, or any interviews for that matter, may not make it in this, and then you.
Well, she's like a professional, isn't she? That's another way of putting it. Eleanor Sturgo's a pro. You can just tell it. As a journalist, I interviewed her a while ago. Right away, when I was speaking to her, within 10 seconds, I was like, okay, she's a pro. She knows exactly what she's doing. And there is you need a certain amount of professionalization, don't you, in a party? It needs to be professional. I would say John Rustad is actually, he does come across quite good a lot of the time. He does come across quite professional, but behind the scenes, this does not look like a professional outfit, does it?
Yeah, and I think, there's a couple big missteps. And I think even when he went after Amelia Boltby there, when he brought out 4 or 5 MPs.
Yeah, it's unprofessional.
I think they all had their heads down. He went after about her mental health and stuff like that. It just didn't. Even if that's true, it doesn't come across very well, right? You're attacking somebody on their mental health issues and dragging it into the public square, and saying she can leave because she's basic. You know what I mean? I won't even you get what's going on, right? It's just not good, and I interviewed Gavin Dew a couple of weeks ago on this, and I said David Eby must be rubbing his hands together because. They can make a big mess, and they are making a big mess. But they can say, "Well, look at that. Do you want that? That'll be worse." And because, that party is frayed. They lost 3 almost right away when he booted out Dallas Brody, and then I think Taron Armstrong, and who's the other guy that left with Dallas?
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but he went as well. Yeah, but he didn't join 1BC, did he? But he kind of left at the same time.
So there's 2 in 1BC, so it's actually 2 BC, one BC. And then I just interviewed Corinne Kirkpatrick, a former MLA, I think it was out of Richmond. She started Centre BC, and I asked her if Eleanor Sturko takes over the Conservative Party. This was last week. I said, does it nullify your party because Eleanor Sturko would be more center-right? And I think one of the key things that in that Jonathan Kay interview, and I thought it was really good, because he has a lot of knowledge, because he wrote Justin Trudeau's memoirs, so he's very connected to all these people, Joe Lee and he knows a lot of these people. He said that it was kind of like he didn't believe in Stephen Harper could become prime minister, but he said what BC needs is a Stephen or Stephanie Harper. They need somebody that can actually coalesce the center, bring them together, like Stephen Harper did, because that was a fractured party too. When the Conservatives, Stephen Harper brought that party together, and they need somebody strong that is like center right, that can bring people from like the sides. I believe here. I think I'm running the campaign desk for Eleanor Sturko here. I believe Eleanor Sturko could actually draw from the NDP. Like she could draw, probably can like Rustad got people to walk across from the United. Sturko might be able to do that with the NDP, and obviously there's going to be people in the Conservative Party right now that are not going to like losing John Rustad as well, because I think they look at their own political future and they think it's over.
Well, it'll take them back in their mind. It'll take them back to BC United days, where they felt like BC United was just a left-wing party or a liberal party. And they thought that they were being completely ignored. So they thought they wanted to join and boost what they considered to be a real conservative outfit. So yeah, there'll be people that feel extremely aggrieved if that is what happens, if it's like a centre-right takeover or a centrist takeover. But another way to put it is, look, BC is a pretty darn liberal place, isn't it? It's a pretty sort of centrist, centre-left, in many cases, rather left.
Well, I'd say it's a very center.
You've got to be realistic, haven't you? You can't just stand there with a sign and be a crank and never get into power. Like, you do have to be realistic. You have to be honest with yourself. And I think put yourself in the shoes of the NDP. Imagine you're David Eby now. What do you least want to happen? I would guess that it is Eleanor Sturko to come in, be the leader, or somebody like Eleanor Sturko, come in, become the leader and kind of revolutionize that party and professionalize that party. That's what you would want the least if you were David Eby. What you want the most is more of this.
Somebody just said that I was pretty sympathetic to, I was a spokesperson for the Centre Party and boosting it's Kirkpatrick, not Kilpatrick, Kirkpatrick. And I was very nice to her. And I think you said that to me as well. You said you were pretty soft on her. And I think I was a bit sympathetic for sure. She was a CPA as well. And, she doesn't have a seat, right? So she doesn't have any power. So, and I do believe that BC is a centrist province. And I think somebody is going to have to find a way to find the center, because even Jason Kenney claims that John Horgan said that David Eby was a mud hutter. And he said that Horgan said, who's going to prove that now? Horgan was worried about the extremist, the David Eby, in his party. There you go.
These are vulnerabilities that I thought a switched on opposition could exploit and do well with.
So somebody said, why don't these people find you? That's funny. And it's Bill C-18, by the way. So I don't know, why don't they find us? Because we just started on this road again. So we're going to plug away.
If you read the research that's been done on this, on Bill C-18, it's all over the place. Just read some of my stories. I've written about 50 of them. If you actually look in the reports, it's explained quite clearly that people weren't going in search of news per se. And most people, most Canadians anyway, don't do that. They don't go, okay, kelownanow.com, enter, or like CBC. They don't do that. They were just coming upon it on their Facebook feed. And Facebook is obviously the big boss of social media. So once it was removed from Facebook, this is what the data show. Most people don't even know that that's happened.
And
because they weren't going out of their way to get news.
Yeah, and here's the question for you.
That's why.
And then here's the answer for you as well. Why is the Liberal Party paying Meta millions and millions of dollars to put their message on Facebook. If the people can just go to the Liberal website and find them, they know where to find them, don't they? Do you know what I mean?
Lightning rod there, mate. I'm sorry, you did the search for the "but I had breakfast this morning" meme. Just type that into Google. I had breakfast this morning. You just committed that. You just committed that sin. Repent.
Anyway, we're gonna probably skip a couple things because we're running pretty late actually. We can come back to some of this stuff tomorrow. You put in here something, the opportunity cost of BC government debt. This is from the Fraser Institute. We're going to put up that graphic there. British Columbians could see lower tax bill if government debt was reduced. Yeah.
This is the reason I put this in there, and the reason I think this is so interesting is these bullet points. We've got the graph, the graphic there, but the bullet points that we have that we're looking at now, it just shows you how much is spent on debt.
A decade ago, BC the lowest debt provinces in Canada, and this is a decade of NDP. After a period of significant spending growth, nominal debt is projected to reach $155 billion by 27-28. That's more than 4 times BC's nominal net debt in 2016-2017. And that comes with debt because British Columbia cannot create dollars. We cannot print money. We don't have that ability like the federal government does. We don't have the Bank of Canada. So we have to sell debt. And that's how they get those credit ratings. And that we've been marked down twice on. And every time we mark it down, and we get marked down on the credit rating, it means our credit cost goes up because the lower your debt quality, the higher your interest that you have to pay. Make sense?
And yeah, our debt quality has been, or British Columbia's debt quality has been declining.
Downgraded a couple times, yeah.
But it's just mega, isn't it? This money's huge, and this is what the reason that I thought it was interesting is because they use that phrase, opportunity cost. Yeah. It's really important to bear that in mind because debt is often looked at as it's almost like consequence free. And then they try and bamboozle you by talking about things like debt to GDP ratio. That's just all a lot of bollocks, really. But what they should say to you is, we're choosing this debt. We're choosing to accrue this debt rather than spend the money on something else. Because to do that, to acquire a big chunk of debt, means that they have to move something out of the budget so that they can pay for the interest payments, and that part of the pie just keeps growing and growing and growing. Because if you're a responsible government, you're supposed to think about all kinds of things like growth of the economy and growth as related to how much debt you're taking on. But a lot of the provinces and Canada itself have just stopped doing that in recent years, and so now it's starting to become, it's like a fixed pie, and it starts to become about like distribution within that pie.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.